Hey guys, Metal Jesus here. Now, I've been on a quest to convert as many of my gaming consoles over to HDMI as possible. However, over the years, I've had 3 different solutions. So in this video, I'm going to share those with you depending on your budget. Let's take a look. Alright guys, for this video I'm busting out 2 of my PlayStation 2s. This of course is the original fat version, and then this is the slim model. I also dug through my collection and pulled out a stack of games, and I chose these because it's kind of random genres, plus all of these support at least 480p, and I'm fairly familiar with them, so I'll notice if something is off. So I'm going to start with a solution for composite video. That's the single yellow video cable. Now, let's be clear. This is the lowest quality and probably, frankly, the easiest version for a lot of people because every PS2 came with this, but it's not the best solution by far. However, it gives us a base to start with, and to be honest, the first 100 or so YouTube videos that I made, I used composite video upscaled to HDMI. And the way I did that was using one of these cheap HDMI converters. These typically cost about 20 bucks, and as you'll see, there's some good things and some not so great things about it. Let's go ahead and start with Ratchet Clank Up Your Arsenal. This is the 3rd game in the series, and here you see composite converted to HDMI. At first glance, this doesn't look that bad, but if you look closely, it's very soft. There's not that many defined sharp edges, especially when you look at, say, the numbers in the upper hand left, or when you bring up the menu, things like that. Also, this game may look wider and more squished than you're used to. Well, that's because a lot of these little boxes artificially widen the screen to be 16:9, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I'm actually using Final Cut here to show you how it's supposed to look. But in reality, when you play it on your TV, it's stretched out like this, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So for the remainder of this video, this is pretty much how I'm going to show composite video, at least for the most part. This is exactly how it looks coming off of the PlayStation 2 through composite to HDMI and then to my Elgato game capture. But to be honest, I mean, you know, other than having blurry, you know, not great visuals, but it's running at 60 frames a second and it's completely playable, and there's probably some lag because it's upscaling to 1080p, but I don't feel it in the game. The next game I want to check out is Splashdown Rides Gone Wild. I love this game. I 100%ed it. And so it's good for me to play because I can tell if there's anything off with it, if there's any noticeable lag. And I don't feel any, even though there probably is maybe a tiny bit, but again, for the most part here, the visuals are blurry, they lack definition, but this is a viable solution for people if you want something under 20 bucks and you just want to play your PS2 games on your new HD television. I need to also mention that the PS2 supports S-Video, which is a slight step up from composite. So I just want to mention that, even though I personally don't have a converter for it, but it is an option. However, the better solution, the one I recommend to most people, is to use component cables. That's right, that's what you see here. That is where they take the video signal and they split it into 3 separate colors: red, blue, and green. However, a huge warning, and that is not all component cables are created equal. See, the thing is that this is an analog video signal, so it's susceptible to interference. So you don't want to go too cheap with these things. Now, I have 2 brands here that I've used for years. One of them is Mad Catz and the other one is Monoprice. And for the most part, for this video, I'm just gonna stick with the Monoprice ones. That's what you'll see in this video. And they're very easy to use. You just plug it into the back of your PS2, and then I'm gonna use this converter box here. So component on the right, and then on the left, it's gonna be HDMI. An important thing to note here though, it is not going to upscale. It's simply converting the analog video signal to HDMI. Then just double check that component is selected in the PlayStation 2 system menu. You just scroll down to it, and that's what that YPBPR means. Now you'll also see RGB there, and I'll cover that at the end of this video, but for now, just make sure that that one's selected. All right, let's play some SSX3. I love this game, but before we do, we're gonna wanna put it into its highest display mode, and that is 480p. Now, there are some PlayStation 2 games that require a 2-button combination when you launch them to enable that mode, and this is one of those. So you hold down triangle and also X, and after a couple minutes, it's gonna ask you to confirm. Easy. But as a refresher, let's take a look at composite video. So notice it's washed out, a little bit blurry, a little bit lacking of definition, and then here is component. So same game, same console, just different cables, and then it's using that converter to HDMI. Immediately you notice that a lot of the textures just have a little bit more definition. The polygons are a little bit sharper. Also, I want to mention here though that again, you're watching this on YouTube, and depending on the size of the screen, it may or may not seem that obvious, but trust me, when you're playing this on an HD television, you'd never go back to composite. You'll stick with component because it just looks way better. I should also mention that while I'm using an HDMI converter box, you don't have to do that if your HD television has component cables. You can plug your PlayStation 2 directly to your HD television and it'll work and look just fine. And then here's a screenshot that hopefully illustrates the differences between the two versions. So this is composite, the lowest quality possible on the PlayStation 2. And then here is component. Now it's subtle, but notice again that the textures are slightly better on component. And also there's a little bit more definition on the hillside there. All right, let's play another game. This is Black. This is a first-person shooter by Criterion. And I picked it because I want to play it. Love this game, it'd been a while. So this is composite video, which as you guys know is the lowest quality possible, kind of blurry. Then let's take a look at component video, which immediately is a little bit more clear on the textures, and also the polygons just look a little bit more sharp. And again, I want to remind you that it's my particular composite conversion box that is doing this stretching right here. I don't know if they all do that. I did some research and it seems like a lot of them do that, especially some of the cheaper ones. It's not a big deal, but I just want you to know that that's artificially happening, and it does it on the TV, which is why I left it. But you can fix that if you capture footage like I do. You just have to do it in the video editing software. That's what I did for years with that. But the component video looks pretty much the same. So looks fantastic. I love this game. The next game I want to check out is Tomb Raider Anniversary. This is a remake of the original Tomb Raider with modern graphics, at least for the time, and also modern controls. And to be quite honest, I really just want to replay this game. I've been kind of itching to do it because it's a really fun one. But it's a good one because, again, it supports 480p, and we can go back and forth between composite and component. And again, I know that the differences are subtle, but trust me, when you play this game on an HD television, you'd never go back to composite, the low res version. You'd stick with component because it just looks a little bit better, a little bit more modern, a little bit more sharper. Tomb Raider Anniversary is also useful in a comparison video like this because when you first launch the game, it displays a color band that you use to calibrate your television. However, in a video like this, you can use it to compare the different connection types to see how different they really are. The next option for playing my PlayStation 2 games in HD over HDMI is using this bad boy right here, the PlayStation 3. Yes, that's right. I want to talk about the original release of the PlayStation 3. Now, there's a couple things to know about this. For one, there is a 20 gig model, there is a 60 gig model, and then you are looking at the 80 gig model right here. And each one of those supports PlayStation 2 playback upscaled to HDMI in their own way. For instance, the 20 and 60 gig models had actual PS2 hardware on the inside, but I mentioned that I own the 80 gig model here. This is the last version of the PS3 that supported the PS2, and it does it through software emulation. Now, the compatibility isn't 100% with this device, but supposedly it runs cooler and will ultimately last me longer. But before we take a look at some PS2 games running on it, I do want to mention the settings. There are two of them in there. The first one is the upscaler and the other one is smoothing. The upscaler will allow you to keep the game in its original 4:3 aspect ratio or stretch it to be widescreen. And then smoothing is really interesting. It actually reduces the roughness of the polygons. And surprisingly, it works very well. So I usually leave this on. Let's go ahead and start with Gran Turismo 4, and we're going to take a look at composite video being the lowest quality possible, although this game still looks kind of amazing even in composite video, but it's one of the few that supports 1080i. I think there's only 2 games that do this, and as you can see, the difference is striking. Also, I'll be honest, this is an excuse to drive around in my hometown of Seattle. I remember when this game first came out and Seattle was one of the circuits that was included in it. I thought it was so cool. All right, let's take a look at some previous games running on the PlayStation 3. This is Splashdown Rides Gone Wild. So again, that is a PlayStation 2 disc inside of my 80 gig PS3 running via emulation. And as I mentioned before, the 20 gig model and the 60 gig model have varying degrees of actual PS2 hardware inside of them. Now, the 20 and 60 gig models support 99% of the PlayStation 2 catalog. And so they're definitely more collectible and they're gonna be a little bit harder and more expensive to find. However, I was just talking about this with a friend of mine over the weekend whose job is to repair consoles, and he reminded me that those early 20 and 60 gig models are very fragile. They tend to overheat. And so while I own the 80 gig version of it, and it's only compatible with about 80% of the PlayStation 2 library, for the games that do run on it, they look fantastic, and for the ones that don't, well, I have the component cables. Some of you are wondering why I haven't even discussed RGB yet, and the truth is because I don't use it in my game room currently, because none of my televisions have ever supported it. It was really ignored in North America. It's primarily something that was used in Europe. At least that's my understanding. However, a lot of the retro consoles support it, including the PlayStation 2. So it's definitely a valid option. The problem is that you end up having to buy an upscaler or something like the FrameMeister, and those things are, you know, a couple $100s. However, if you currently have one of those upscalers, then by all means, that's the route you should take. I also want to mention, as you can see, this is a very complicated subject when it comes to getting the best video quality out of the PlayStation 2. As a matter of fact, there's a YouTube channel called My Life in Gaming. They did a in-depth video on this very subject. They basically spent almost an hour going into the nuances of all the different options that are available to you. So if you want to look deeper into this subject, I highly recommend you check out that video. I'll link to it in the upper left here. And then finally, if you want to check out the solutions that I'm using in my game room, I'll put links down in the video description below to Amazon where you can check out those products. Love to know what you guys thought about this video. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. I hope people don't think it's cheating talking about the PS3 and its PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility, because, I mean, all things considered, it really is the best solution. But it's worth noting that Sony has re-released a lot of PS2 games on the PlayStation Store for the PlayStation 4, which is really cool. Now, you have to re-buy the games, which kind of sucks. It would be nice if Sony allowed you to put in your actual discs, but it's something, and, you know, it's pretty easy to do. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.